Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I used to think trust was something unshakable. You build it with someone, brick by brick, over years of shared moments and whispered promises. But now, standing in my own home, I realized trust wasn't solid at all. It was fragile. And when it breaks, it doesn't just crack, it shatters. Jessica and I have been married for 6 years. She was always the social one, the one who knew how to fill a room with energy. Me? I was the guy behind the scenes, the one making sure everything in our lives ran smoothly. She worked in real estate, constantly meeting new people, always on the move. I worked in IT security, a job that taught me that nothing, no matter how secure it seemed, was ever truly safe. Lately, something had been off. It wasn't anything obvious. Jessica still smiled, still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still asked about my day. But there were little things, how she suddenly started working longer hours, how she was always on her phone, but never shared what was so interesting. And then there were the open houses, the ones she attended alone. At first, I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. But paranoia was a symptom of knowing how people operate when they think no one is watching. And something told me Jessica had started to believe exactly that. Then came the family barbecue. We were at her sister's house, the backyard filled with the sounds of laughter, the smell of grilled burgers hanging in the air. I was standing with her brother, beer in hand, when I overheard her voice carry across the patio. "Oh, Ryan? He's harmless," she said with a laugh. "He spends more time on his computer than he does paying attention to anything else." The group around her laughed. I felt the sting of those words settle deep in my chest. Someone else chimed in. "At least that means he's not in your business, right?" Jessica smirked, swirling her wine. "Exactly. Makes my life easier." The laughter that followed was light, casual. They didn't see it. They didn't hear the meaning behind it. But I did. I set my drink down and walked inside. The noise of the gathering faded behind me as I made my way to the bathroom, gripping the sink as I stared at my reflection. Harmless. Easier. Like I was nothing more than a placeholder in her life, someone she could maneuver around without much effort. I exhaled slowly, my jaw tightening. Something was wrong, and I was done ignoring it. I didn't say a word on the drive home. Jessica, on the other hand, talked like nothing had happened. She scrolled through her phone, laughing at messages, humming along to the radio, completely unaware, or maybe just unconcerned, that I had heard everything, that I had spent the rest of the night picking apart every interaction, every moment that had led to this slow unraveling. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally noticed my silence. "What's with you?" she asked, stuffing her phone into her purse. I gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Nothing." She sighed. "Come on, Ryan. You barely spoke all night." I forced a breath through my nose, keeping my voice even. "Just tired." Jessica studied me for a second, then shrugged. "Whatever." She got out, already shifting back in her world, where my mood wasn't her concern unless it inconvenienced her. I followed her inside, locking the door behind me as she kicked off her heels and tossed her purse onto the counter. She stretched, letting out a content sigh. I swear, my sister's friends are getting worse. Some of those guys were embarrassing themselves trying to flirt with me. I glanced at her. "Did you enjoy it?" She smirked. "It's harmless fun. It's not like I was interested." Harmless. That word again. I let it go, heading upstairs while she made herself comfortable on the couch. As I walked into her bedroom, I caught sight of her work bag sitting in the corner. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But tonight, something nagged at me. Jessica wasn't the type to be careless. She was meticulous about her appearance, her schedule, the way she presented herself to the world. But lately, she had been sloppy, coming home late without a solid excuse, hiding her phone screen when I walked by, laughing a little too hard at text messages. I had brushed it off before. Not anymore. I walked over to the bag and unzipped the top. Just files. Client documents. Then at the bottom, something small and sleek, a gift box. My fingers hesitated before pulling it out. It was heavy, wrapped in expensive packaging, the kind that didn't come from a casual purchase. I flipped it open. Inside was a watch. Not just any watch. A men's watch. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe it was for a client. Maybe it was a gift for someone's birthday. I reached for the receipt crumpled at the bottom of the box. Paid in cash. No name. I stood there, the weight of the watch pressing into my palm. My brain searched for a logical explanation, something that didn't lead me to the conclusion clawing at the edges of my thoughts. Then I heard her voice. Ryan? What are you doing? I turned slowly, keeping my expression unreadable. Jessica stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her gaze flicking from me to the box in my hand. She hesitated. What did you find that? In your bag. She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. Wow, snooping through my stuff now. I ignored the deflection. Who's it for? She rolled her eyes. It's a client's. I was going to drop it off tomorrow. I held up the receipt. Paid in cash. Her face barely changed, but I saw the slight stiffening of her shoulders. The momentary flicker of panic before she covered it up. Yes, she said smoothly. Some people still use cash, Ryan. Not everything is a conspiracy. I nodded, setting the box down carefully on the dresser. All right. Jessica studied me for a moment longer, waiting for me to push further. When I didn't, she let out a breath and turned toward the bathroom. You've been weird lately, she muttered. I stayed silent, listening as the shower turned on. I wasn't weird. I was awake. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, every possible scenario running through my head. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really was nothing. But my instincts told me otherwise. The next morning, Jessica left early, saying she had an open house to prepare. I watched her pull out of the driveway, my mind already made up. I went straight to my office and opened my laptop. Jessica thought I was clueless. She thought I was too busy with my work, too caught up in firewalls and security breaches to pay attention to what was happening right in front of me. She had no idea who she was married to. I had installed security cameras in the house months ago, not out of paranoia, but because I dealt with online threats for a living. I knew how easy it was for people to break in, to steal, to invade. The system was discreet, designed for security purposes, not spying. But now, I had another use for it. I pulled up the software, scanning through the last few weeks of footage. Jessica had no idea the house had motion sensors, no idea that every time she moved, an alert was stored in the database. I started clicking through the history, searching for anything unusual. Then I saw it. Last Thursday, 3:27 p.m. I clicked the file, and the video opened. Jessica, walking through the front door. Not alone. A man followed behind her. Tall, well-dressed, carrying nothing but confidence. My stomach clenched as I watched her lead him inside, closing the door behind them. The footage jumped, skipping to the next alert. Bedroom motion detected. I clicked it. The screen flickered. Jessica, the man. My bedroom. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. I forced myself to breathe, gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. The rage simmering beneath my skin was volcanic, ready to erupt. But I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Jessica had been careful, but not careful enough. She thought she was untouchable, that I was too stupid or blind to ever find out. She was wrong. And now, I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of betrayal she had inflicted on me. I sat there for a long time, my hands clenched into fists, staring at the laptop like it might change what I had just seen. My heart wasn't pounding like I expected. My breathing wasn't ragged. Instead, there was a strange calm settling over me, like my body had decided it was done reacting and was now just waiting. Jessica had done this. In my house. In our bed. While I was working to keep our lives secure, while I was trusting her. And she had no idea I knew. I exhaled slowly, then forced myself to open the laptop again. I wasn't done. I needed more. I needed to see just how deep this went, how long I had been living a lie. I pulled up more footage. A week earlier, same time, same pattern. Jessica walking through the door, her body language relaxed, comfortable, leading him inside like she had done a dozen times before. Another video from 2 weeks ago. Another visit. Different clothes, same betrayal. She hadn't been careless once. She had been careless for weeks. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have kept going, dug even further into the past, but I stopped myself. It didn't matter. Whether this had been going on for a month or a year, the result was the same. She had destroyed our marriage, our trust, everything I thought we had built together. I closed the laptop again, slower this time. The anger was there, coiling under my skin, but I wouldn't waste it on a confrontation. No, that would be too easy for her. She'd cry, beg, twist the story until she found a way to make herself the victim. I knew how people like her operated. The moment I showed emotion, she would seize on it, use it to manipulate me into staying, into understanding. But I didn't want understanding. I wanted control. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left the house. The first stop was my lawyer's office. Mark had handled a few security contracts for me before, but this was the first time I'd ever needed his services for something personal. He raised an eyebrow when I walked in unannounced. "Ryan," he greeted, leaning back in his chair. "Didn't expect to see you today." I dropped in the seat across from him, my voice steady. "I need a divorce, and I want to make sure she gets nothing. That got his full attention. That bad. Worse." Mark studied me for a second, then nodded. "All right, let's start with the basics. Does she have any financial claims? Joint accounts, shared properties, business investments?" I shook my head. "Everything's in my name. The house, the accounts, even the cars." His lips twitched in approval. "Smart man." He pulled out a legal pad. "And the reason for divorce?" I took a breath. "Infidelity." He didn't look surprised. "Do you have proof?" I pulled out my phone, opened the security footage, and slid it across the desk. Mark pressed play, watching the screen in silence. When the video ended, he let out a low whistle. "That's about as solid as it gets. You won't have to pay a dime. We can file immediately." "Good," I said, standing. "Make it happen." He nodded. "And Ryan? Don't tell her yet. The moment she knows, she'll try to hide assets, manipulate the situation. Let's blindside her." I smirked. "That's the plan." The next stop was home. I walked through the house with a different set of eyes, seeing it not as ours but as mine. I went through every drawer, every closet, pulling together anything that belonged to Jessica. Clothes, jewelry, personal belongings. I packed it all into suitcases and left them by the door. Then I changed the locks. By the time Jessica came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch, waiting. The TV was off, the living room dimly lit by the evening sun filtering through the blinds. She walked in, kicking off her heels, sighing dramatically like she'd had a long day. "Hey," she called out, not even looking at me. "Dinner plans?" I stayed silent. She finally glanced up, frowning. "Ryan." I reached for the remote and turned on the TV. The footage played instantly. Jessica froze. At first, she didn't react. Maybe she thought it was a mistake. Maybe she thought she was watching something else. But then she saw herself, walking into our bedroom, her lover following close behind. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, then closed. I said, my voice calm. "Just watch." She did. She watched the entire thing, every second of her betrayal playing out in real time, undeniable and damning. When the screen finally went black, the silence was suffocating. Jessica let out a shaky breath. "Ryan," I stood, picking up a stack of papers from the table and handing them to her. "Divorce papers. Already filed." Her hands trembled as she took them. "And an eviction notice," I continued. "You don't live here anymore." Her eyes snapped to mine, panic setting in. "Ryan, please. Let's just talk about this." I gestured to the suitcases by the door. "You have somewhere to stay. His place, right?" She shook her head rapidly, her breath coming in gasps. No, he's..." I tilted my head. "Not interested in taking you in." Her silence told me everything. She reached for my arm, her voice breaking. "Please. I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you." I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, Jessica. You love the life I gave you. And now, you have nothing." Her face crumpled, but I was done. I grabbed my keys, walked to the door, and held it open. "Leave," I said simply. She didn't move at first, but then, realizing there was nothing left to argue, nothing left to salvage, she picked up her bags with shaking hands and walked past me. I closed the door behind her. I stood by the door, listening as Jessica's footsteps faded down the driveway. The moment was surreal. This house had been ours for years, filled with shared memories, late-night conversations, and quiet mornings over coffee. Now it was just mine. The air inside felt different, lighter, like something toxic had finally been purged. I exhaled slowly, locking the deadbolt before turning away. The suitcases were gone. Jessica was gone, and she wasn't coming back. I walked through the house with fresh eyes. The living room where we used to curl up and watch movies, the kitchen where we had cooked together in the early days before she started coming home late. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. It felt like I'd been living in a carefully constructed lie, and now that the illusion was broken, I could finally see things for what they were. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. "Mark." I answered, my voice steady. "Yeah." "It's done," he said. "The paperwork was filed this afternoon. She's officially out." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Good. She's going to try to fight this," he continued. "You should be prepared for that." I smirked, glancing at the now empty spot where her shoes used to be by the door. She can try. That night, I didn't just sleep. I slept. No tossing and turning, no staring at the ceiling for hours wondering where she was or if she was lying to me. Just deep, uninterrupted rest. When I woke up, the sun was already streaming through the blinds. I checked my phone, no missed calls from her. No texts. Maybe she had finally gotten the message. I spent the morning clearing out the last remnants of her. I packed up the framed photos, the clothes she had left behind, the things she had forgotten in her rush to leave. A part of me expected it to hurt, but it didn't. It was just another task to complete, another step towards something better. By noon, I was at the bank, finalizing the process of separating our finances. I had already moved my money into a private account weeks ago, anticipating this exact scenario. Jessica wouldn't get a cent from me. As I walked out of the bank, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to answer. I put the phone to my ear. "Ryan." There was silence for a second. Then a familiar voice. "Jessica." "Hey." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She cleared her throat. I don't know where to go." I leaned against my car, staring out at the street. "Not my problem." "Ryan, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I messed up. I know that. But I need you." I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. "No, Jessica, you don't need me. You need what I provided. A house, stability, a life that you took for granted while you were sneaking around behind my back." I let the words sink in before adding, "And now you have neither." She sniffled. You thought what?" I interrupted, my voice sharp now. "That I'd take you back? That I'd listen to you cry and suddenly forget what you did? You weren't crying when you were bringing him into my house. You weren't crying when you were lying to my face every night." A small, broken sob came through the line. "I don't have anywhere else to go." I sighed. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed everything." She was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "So that's it." I let the weight of the moment settle in. "Yeah," I said. "That's it." I hung up before she could say another word. The next few days passed in a blur. I threw myself into work, into moving forward. The house became mine again, piece by piece. I bought new furniture, redecorated, changed the things that had once belonged to us into something that belonged to me. Then, one night, I got a message from an old friend, someone who had been at the barbecue the night Jessica had humiliated me. "Saw Jessica today. She looks rough. Heard her guy didn't take her in after all." I stared at the screen for a moment before setting the phone down. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't gloating, but I was satisfied. Jessica had spent years taking me for granted, treating me like I was disposable. Now, she was the one left behind, while I was finally free. And I had no regrets. The days after Jessica left passed in a strange kind of quiet. It wasn't the suffocating silence I had grown used to, the one that came from tension thick enough to cut with a knife. This was something different, something lighter, something free. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. There was no passive-aggressive sighing from across the room, no forced small talk over dinner, no watching her disappear into the bathroom to send a text she thought I didn't notice. I was alone, and I liked it. I threw myself into work, spending longer hours at the office, taking on more projects. The focus helped. It kept my mind from lingering on the past, on the betrayal, on the fact that for years I had been blind to what had been happening right in front of me. But the thing was, I didn't feel sorry for myself. I didn't feel broken. If anything, I felt like I had finally woken up. One evening, I was at my desk when my phone buzzed. A message from Mason, one of the few people I still kept in touch with after everything went down. Might want to come out tonight. Heard something you'd be interested in. I frowned, fingers hovering over the screen. Mason wasn't the type to be cryptic. I typed back a quick reply. Where? 10 minutes later, I was pulling into the parking lot of a bar downtown. It was one of those places Jessica used to roll her eyes at, saying it was too cheap, too loud, too crowded. The exact kind of place I needed right now. I spotted Mason at the bar, nursing a beer, his expression unreadable. As I slid onto the stool next to him, he gave me a nod. Didn't think you'd show up. I signaled the bartender for a drink. You said you had something I'd be interested in. Mason smirked, taking a slow sip before setting his glass down. Jessica's been making the rounds, he said casually. Word is, she's been trying to find a place to stay. Apparently, her lover wasn't as serious about her as she thought. I let out a quiet breath, taking in the information. It didn't surprise me. Guys like him, they never planned on sticking around for the fallout. Jessica had bet everything on a fantasy, and now reality had caught up to her. Mason watched me carefully. You gonna reach out? I scoffed, shaking my head. For what? He chuckled. Figured as much. Just thought you'd like to know. I did. Not because I wanted revenge. No, I had already gotten that. But because it confirmed something I had known deep down all along. Jessica had never planned for consequences. She had thought she could have it all. Her stable husband, her reckless affair, her safety net. She never imagined what it would be like to lose everything. And now, she was learning. A few days later, I was coming out of work when I saw her. She was sitting on a bench near my building, arms wrapped around herself, staring down at the pavement. For a moment, I considered walking right past her. But then she looked up, and our eyes met. She hesitated, then stood. Ryan. I kept my face neutral. Jessica. She looked different. Not in an obvious way, but in a way I could feel. The confidence, the arrogance, the way she used to carry herself like she was always one step ahead. It was gone. She looked small. She swallowed hard. I don't know why I'm here. I nodded slowly. Neither do I. She let out a shaky breath, rubbing her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. I don't have anywhere else to go. There it was. The confession. The truth she had probably been holding back, hoping I'd be the one to say something first. I studied her for a moment. Did you go to him? She flinched. Yes. But she trailed off, her voice barely above a whisper. He said it was just fun, that I was reading too much into things. I let that sink in. Jessica had thrown everything away for a man who didn't even want her. I exhaled through my nose, tilting my head slightly. And now you think what? I'll take you back. Her face crumpled. I don't know, she admitted, her voice cracking. I don't know what to do. I should have felt something in that moment. Sympathy, sadness, maybe even the tiniest flicker of old love. But I felt nothing. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. You'll figure it out. Her eyes widened slightly, like she had expected something different, some kind of opening. Ryan, please, I did everything for you, Jessica. I cut in, my voice firm. I gave you everything, and it wasn't enough. She shook her head, eyes glassy. It wasn't about that. Then what was it about? I asked, not even angry, just tired. What excuse could possibly make this better? She opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time, she had no answer. I nodded once. Goodbye, Jessica. Then I walked away. She didn't call after me. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe she finally understood. That night, I went home to my house, sat on my couch, and drank a beer in silence. Not because I was trying to numb anything, but because I finally had nothing left to numb. I wasn't her backup plan. I wasn't her safety net. I was free, and I was never looking back. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that only comes after you've finally closed a door that should have been shut a long time ago. There was no lingering doubt, no second-guessing. Jessica had made her choices, and now she was living with them. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up dreading what new disappointment or passive-aggressive remark would be waiting for me. The weight that I hadn't even realized had been suffocating me was gone. I got up, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and stood by the kitchen window, watching the neighborhood slowly come to life. I had spent so much time in survival mode, just going through the motions, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to enjoy the simple things. The warmth of a quiet morning, the smell of fresh coffee, the way the sun crept over the rooftops. It felt good. By noon, I was in my lawyer's office, finalizing the last of the paperwork. Mark skimmed through the documents before looking up at me. Everything is in motion. She'll be getting her official court date soon, but considering the circumstances, this will be quick. I nodded. Good. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. She reached out to you yet? I smirked. Yeah, she tried. He let out a low chuckle, and I shrugged. She's someone else's problem now. Mark grinned, satisfied. Glad to hear it. I left the office feeling lighter, more in control than I had in years. This wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about reclaiming my life. A few days passed without incident. Jessica had gone quiet. No messages, no surprise visits, no last-ditch attempts to manipulate me into giving her another chance. I knew it wouldn't last. People like her don't just accept consequences without a fight, but I enjoyed the silence while it lasted. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but something told me to check. A message from an unknown number. Ryan, please. I need to talk to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back a simple response. No, you don't. I blocked the number and set the phone down, shaking my head. Jessica wasn't reaching out because she had changed. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught, sorry that her fantasy had crumbled around her. But I wasn't interested in fixing her mistakes. The next morning, I stopped by the bank to finalize the separation of our accounts. As I was signing the last document, the banker glanced up at me. She tried to withdraw from your joint account a few days ago. I smirked, and she was denied, of course. The account was locked the moment the divorce was filed. I let out a quiet breath, nodding. Jessica had spent years assuming I would always be there to catch her, to fix things when she screwed up. But that safety net was gone, and now she was finally feeling what it was like to stand on her own. That night, I got a call from Mason. You're not going to believe this, he said, his voice laced with amusement. I leaned back on my couch, beer in hand. Try me. She showed up at his place. I didn't need to ask who he met. I chuckled, and he turned her away, said she wasn't worth the drama. I laughed, shaking my head. Figures. Jessica had burned every bridge, thinking she could just hop to the next without consequences. But now, with nowhere to run, she was finally understanding what it meant to be truly alone. Mason hesitated before adding, she looked bad, man. Like really bad. I exhaled, taking a slow sip of my beer. Not my problem. And I meant it. Jessica had spent years tearing me down, making me feel small, treating me like an afterthought while she built a fantasy life behind my back. Now, she was the one left behind, while I had everything I needed, peace, clarity, and a future that no longer included her. I had no sympathy, no regrets, and I was finally free. The day Jessica received the official divorce notice, I knew without checking my phone. I could feel it in the shift of the air, in the way the tension that had been lingering for weeks finally broke. Sure enough, that evening Mark called. She got the papers, he said, his voice edged with amusement. And she is not handling it well. I smirked, stretching back in my chair. How bad? She left 3 voicemails from my office, all of them cycling between anger and desperation. First, she's furious that you're cutting her off financially. Then, she's heartbroken and can't believe you're doing this. He paused. Want me to forward them? They're pretty entertaining. I chuckled, shaking my head. I'll pass. Mark sighed. She's gonna fight this, you know. I expected as much. Jessica never went down without a struggle, even when she was dead wrong. But there was no fight left for her to win. I had the evidence, the paperwork, the legal team. She had, well, nothing. I hung up and poured myself a drink, standing by the window as I watched the street outside. The world kept moving, indifferent to everything Jessica was going through. and I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just satisfaction. A few days later, I was at the restaurant when Mason walked in, shaking his head. "You're not going to believe this." I raised an eyebrow. "Jessica again?" He nodded, taking a seat across from me. "She's been telling people you blindsided her, that she was working on things, and you just up and divorced her like some heartless bastard." I scoffed, running a hand down my face. "Of course she is." Mason leaned forward. "Thing is, nobody's buying it. Everyone saw the footage. They know what she did. She's burned every bridge, and now she's realizing she has nowhere to turn." That didn't surprise me. Jessica had always relied on charm, on playing the victim when it suited her. But people weren't as stupid as she thought. When the mask came off, there was nothing left underneath. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I knew exactly who it was. I let it ring. Then a text. "Please, Ryan, just talk to me." I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. There was nothing left to say. The next few weeks passed quickly. The legal process moved forward without a hitch, every attempt Jessica made to slow it down failing. The bank had denied her access to any remaining accounts. The house was mine. The car she used to drive? Also mine. Everything she had taken for granted was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do about it. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from Mason. "You're going to want to see this." He sent a link. A listing. Jessica's real estate license was up for sale. I blinked, reading it twice. She was selling her career? Mason called a second later, not even giving me time to process it. "Dude, she's broke." I sat back in my chair, shaking my head. "She's that desperate? She's got nothing left," he said. "Lost the house, lost the car, lost the guy she threw it all away for. Nobody in her circle is giving her the time of day anymore." He paused. "She's finally realizing what she lost." I let out a breath, rubbing my jaw. Yeah, too bad for her. That night, I sat in my living room, sipping whiskey and thinking about how quickly everything had unraveled. Jessica had spent years treating me like I wasn't enough, like she could do better, like she deserved more. But now, she was the one struggling while I was finally at peace. It was over, and I never looked back. The first morning after the divorce was finalized, I woke up feeling like I had truly stepped into a new life. There are no more legal battles hanging over my head, no more unexpected messages from Jessica, no more distractions. Just me, my house, my work, and an open road ahead. I made my coffee and stood by the window, watching the morning light filter through the trees. It hit differently now, like I was seeing it with fresh eyes. For years, I'd been trapped in a cycle of emotional exhaustion, constantly putting out fires Jessica started while she played the perfect wife in public. But now, the silence in the house wasn't loneliness. It was peace. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself, something I hadn't done in a long time. I got back into running, something I had let slide when my energy was drained from dealing with Jessica's endless demands. I upgraded my home office, diving into new projects that actually excited me. I even took a weekend trip out of town. No itinerary, no obligations. Just the freedom to do whatever the hell I wanted. One afternoon, Mason stopped by the restaurant. He slid onto the bar stool across from me, grinning. "Man, you look different." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" He smirked, like a guy who finally shook off a deadweight anchor. I chuckled, shaking my head. "It's been good. Better than I expected." He leaned on the counter. "Well, you're definitely handling it better than she is." I glanced up. "Jessica." Mason nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "She's still struggling. Word is she tried to get back into real estate, but no one wants to work with her after everything that happened." He shrugged. "Reputation matters in that industry. People don't trust someone who blows up their own life like that." I didn't feel bad for her. Jessica had spent years treating me like I wasn't enough, like she was doing me a favor just by being in my life. But now, she was the one who had been discarded. That evening, as I was leaving the restaurant, I noticed a familiar figure standing near the parking lot. Jessica. She looked different, not just physically, though she did look more tired, more worn down, but in the way she carried herself. There was no confidence in her posture, no smugness. Just someone who had finally realized they had lost everything. I debated getting in my car and leaving, but I was curious. So I walked up to her. Jessica. She turned, startled. Ryan. We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid stretching between us. Then she let out a shaky breath. I don't know why I'm here. I tilted my head. Yeah, you do. Her eyes flickered with something, regret, maybe. I wanted to see you. I crossed my arms, waiting. She hesitated. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I screwed up, but I wanted to say it to your face. I'm sorry. I studied her carefully. Are you sorry for what you did, or just sorry for what it cost you? She swallowed hard, looking away. Both. I nodded slowly. At least you're honest. She let out a humorless laugh. It took losing everything to get there. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She looked up at me, her voice quiet. Do you ever think about what we had? About the good parts? I met her gaze, unshaken. I think about how I wasted time on someone who didn't deserve me. She winced. Ryan, I don't hate you, Jessica, I said, my voice calm. But I don't feel anything for you either. She blinked rapidly, like she was fighting tears. But I wasn't going to be the man who comforted her anymore. She gave me a small, sad smile. I guess that's fair. I nodded. Goodbye, Jessica. And with that, I walked away. That night, I sat outside on my porch, watching the stars. There was no sadness, no lingering bitterness. Just peace. Jessica had been my past. Now, my future was mine. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.